full speed ahead. And now I would like to ask Mr. Edwards to say a few words about the endeavor of Heritage Foundation and the foundation focusing on the victims of the communism. Thank you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and I'm very pleased to be here sort of wearing two hats. I'm here as a fellow of the Heritage Foundation, and we are the custodians of this wonderful gulag collection which you see on the walls around you here. We will be putting this gulag collection on exhibit in various embassies here in Washington, D.C., and also in a traveling exhibit around the country. For example, it's going to be at the George Herbert Walker Bush Presidential Library, Bush 41, and it's called Papa Bush, sometimes we say. That will be there in September and October of this year, and we hope to do the same things out here. But I wanted to say once again that the Czech Embassy led the way by being the first embassy in this new year to exhibit this collection, and we're very, very pleased to cooperate with them in that. This morning I'd like to say a few words in my capacity as chairman of the Victims of Communism Memorial Foundation. We conceived the idea of the foundation, the Victims of Communism, and the idea of a Victims of Communism Memorial almost 20 years ago, because we could see that already people were forgetting about the victims and the crimes of communism. We felt strongly there had to be a mechanism, an organization that would serve to remind people of the estimated 100 million men, women, and children who died during the 20th century because they did not want to live in a communist paradise. So we were authorized, a public law passed by Congress and signed by President Bill Clinton, to build this memorial. We set about doing that, and it took us a little while. It took us, as a matter of fact, 14 years. Now you might say that's a long time, but actually the average time to build a memorial or monument in Washington is 14 years. Why? Well, because there are 24 steps that you must negotiate to build a memorial or a museum or a monument here in Washington, D.C., 24. So finally, though, in June of 2007, we dedicated the Victims of Communism Memorial, located on Capitol Hill, within just a few blocks of the U.S. Capitol building itself, and accepting the memorial for the American people. President George W. Bush said the following: "The 20th century will be remembered as the deadliest century in human history. So it's fitting that we gather to remember those who perished at communism's hands and dedicate this memorial that will enshrine their suffering and sacrifice in the conscience of the world." In June of 2008, on our first anniversary, the House Majority Leader Steny Hoyer, we've always been firmly and staunchly bipartisan, explained that there are no names on the wall of the memorial because there's no way that you could list the names of 100 million people who were killed by communists. Such a wall, he said, would stretch from here to Leesburg, Virginia. On our third anniversary, we gathered again to resolve we will never forget the tragic but also heroic events of the century-long battle against communism. The Ukrainian Holodomor, of Stalin's reign of terror, Katyn, the forcible incorporation of the Baltic states to the Soviet Union, the Budapest Uprising of 1956, the Prague Spring of 1968, the Bay of Pigs, the boat people of Vietnam, the killing fields of Cambodia, Tiananmen Square. We will not forget, and we must not forget, the Gulag, the KGB, the Stasi, and the Isle of Pines, and today's Our Jewish brothers and sisters understand how important the past is. They know that those who do not study the past, who do not learn from history, are certain to repeat it. And so we continue to tell the truth about communism, which led to the creation of our online Global Museum on Communism, which tells the story of communism from Karl Marx and the Communist Manifesto to the suppression of democratic dissidents, like Dr. Liu Xiaobo by the Chinese Communist regime. And I invite everyone here to visit the Global Museum on Communism if you haven't done so, where we are presently creating a special new exhibit about the Gulag, with the assistance of the Pulitzer Prize-winning historian Anne Applebaum. This exhibit also will include a virtual visit to a Gulag camp. You'll be able, the miracle, don't ask me how they do it, but they do it. You'll be able to visit a camp, go into a barracks and see and feel as much as possible what it was like to be in that kind of situation. I'm delighted to report that since we launched our online museum, we have had 449 unique visitors and 295,207 page views. The average time of the visit is 3.5 minutes, which I'm told is quite good. And this we're particularly proud of. We've had visitors from 167 countries around the world, including visitors from China, Vietnam, and even Cuba, getting along those firewalls which those governments have set up. But we were not satisfied with our educational outreach, and so we decided to craft a curriculum on communism for high school students. It's a dynamic, interactive lesson plan for teachers to help them teach their pupils about the history, philosophy, and legacy of communism. And an integral part of the plan, of the lesson plan, is the online Global Museum on Communism, which will serve as a primary source of information, because we know that young people, like many of you in this audience this morning, that's how you get your information. It's through the internet, and social media. So we're using that particular technique to reach out to particularly our young people. And the urgent need for such a curriculum was underscored for us by what recently happened at Alexander Graham Bell School in Chicago. This is one of the best public schools in the city. 8th graders, young men and women of 14 and 15, were asked to select quotations from prominent leaders that represented self-esteem or self-awareness. Among the 20 quotes selected were the words of Fidel Castro, a dictator who was ruled Cuba with an iron hand for some 52 years, and China's Mao Zedong, the worst mass murderer of the 20th century. The Castro quote was, and I quote, "It does not matter how small you are if you have faith and a plan of action." The Mao quote was, "Once all struggles are grasped, miracles are possible." Now, by themselves, the quotations are relatively harmless, vaguely inspirational, but that's the point. You cannot separate the men from their words and who they were and who they are. You must consider what they say in the context of who they are. As we know in this room, Castro and Mao were not just two more national leaders, But communist dictators came to power by deliberately lying to the people. They promised the people of their countries a better life and quickly delivered them into bondage. Now, we don't blame the students for selecting the course. They know little about communism because they have not been taught about communism. And it's an unparalleled record of death and destruction of the past century. And furthermore, many of today's teachers, think about it, were children in 1989 when communism collapsed in Eastern and Central Europe. For them, for these teachers, communism was something that happened long ago and far away. Now, let me offer one more example of the challenge before us as we seek to educate people. Down in Bedford, Virginia, a private foundation built a moving and in most respects accurate memorial to D-Day. D-Day, June 4th, 1944, when U.S., British, and Canadian forces stormed the beaches of Normandy, France, and initiated a military campaign that ended in the defeat of Nazi Germany. However, the National D-Day Memorial Foundation decided to install a bust of Joseph Stalin. Not only that, but next to Franklin D. Roosevelt and Winston Churchill. Such an action does terrible damage to the memory of those brave men who died on D-Day. Since the fall of the Soviet Union, statues of Stalin have been torn down all over Europe, and even in the former Soviet Union, in Stalin's hometown. How ironic that a Stalin bust should be included in the U.S. memorial about a seminal event in an historic crusade for freedom. We launched a national petition drive along with the American Legion and other patriotic groups that persuaded the D-Day Foundation to remove the bust. But there is talk of reinstalling Stalin, who ranks behind Mao only as a mass murderer. So we will continue to monitor the situation and take appropriate educational action. We will insist on telling the truth about communism, including that communism was not a good idea that went wrong. We hear that, well, it was just a good idea, but it went wrong. It was a bad idea from beginning to end. It was, as the American historian Richard Pipes has observed, a pseudoscience converted into a pseudo-religion and embodied an inflexible, that is, totalitarian, political regime. Last year, we presented Professor Pipes with our highest honor, the Truman Reagan Medal of Freedom. 5 years ago, in 2006, we presented a medal to a citizen of the Czech Republic, who was an inspiration to all who cherish liberty, Renata Hrabová. Every Czech knows her story, her courageous resistance, first to the Nazis during World War II, and then to the communists in the post-war period. When the communists took control of the Czechoslovak government in February of 1948, Dr. Hrabová resigned her seat in Parliament, but remained politically active, refusing to temper her opposition to the communists. In September of 1949, she was arrested and charged falsely with conspiracy to overthrow the communist government. Repeatedly beaten during interrogations that lasted for weeks, Dr. Hrabová refused to recant her position regarding illegality of the communist government. And after a nationally publicized show trial, she was sentenced to death and hanged on June 27, 1950. Among her last words, which speak to us today, were, "I love this country. I love these people. Build prosperity for them." Dr. Hrabová's life was stolen from her, as were the lives of other Czechs and Poles, Hungarians, Balts, Bulgarians, Cubans, Cambodians, Vietnamese, Chinese, Koreans, the river of humanity. So we cannot, we must not, we will not forget them or their sacrifice. We must all pledge that never again will we allow so evil a tyranny to terrorize the world.